We're looking at our fifth passage, which is a story-based passage. Let's read. Once there dashed a rich businessman who was smart and young. He was fond of gambling. So the first blank, what are our options? Once there danced a rich businessman. Once there lived a rich businessman. Once there placed a rich businessman. Once there is a rich businessman. Once there stayed a rich businessman. Okay. So as all stories begin, right, we understand that it has to be option 2. Once there lived a rich businessman. So let's make that change. Once there lived a rich businessman who was smart and young. He was fond of gambling. Alright. One day when he was on a business tour, he stayed in an inn. There he was dashed for a game of gambling by a veteran gambler who was reputed as invincible in the game. Alright. Again, words that probably hamper meaning of the context. Let's look at one word here, which is invincible, right? Invincible means someone who cannot be defeated, right? And what about veteran? Veteran gambler, adjective there. Veteran means someone who is very experienced and he knows what he knows exactly what he's doing, and he's really good at gambling. Right? So one day when he was in a business tour, he stayed in an inn. There he was dashed. Let's look at our options for blank 2. He was made, he was crying, he was told, he was struck, he was invited. Logically, we know that the answer is option 5. He was invited by that veteran gambler for a game. Right? So let's put that down. Okay, so he was invited. And then what happened? When the game was on, he noticed that his dash had resorted to foul play by stealthily gobbling up the dice and pretending it to be lost. Foul play meaning, obviously, he cheated, he didn't play fair. So let's look at our options for blank 3. He noticed that his dash had resorted. So I need a word substituting that person, right? This is a gambling game. So is it his opposite, his self, his man, his opponent, or his play? It is option 4. His opponent. He noticed that his opponent, right, who's the person he's playing against. So his opponent had resorted to foul play by stealthily gobbling up the dice and pretending it to be lost. This made the young man lose the game. The young man, however, did not accept his defeat. He thought of dash a lesson to the other gambler. In fact, again, I don't even have to look at my options, right? He knew that his opponent cheated him. Yeah, he did not play fair. So obviously he wants to take revenge. He wants to show him. So he thought of dash a lesson to the other gambler. I'm sure it's a colloquial expression. Let's look at our options for blank 4. Predicting, saying, asking, teaching, making. So he thought of teaching a lesson to the other gambler, not predicting, not saying, not asking, and not making. It's option 4, teaching. He thought of teaching him a lesson. Again, it's a colloquial expression, right? We've heard people say that. So when he returned home, he smeared the dice with poison and dried them carefully. Smeared, just applied, right? That's what the meaning of smeared is. Next day, he went to his opponent and dash him for a fresh round of game. What are our options for 5? Slapped him, smelled him, challenged him, request him, killed him. I could say request, but then again it's not in the right form. It has to be requested him. But here I have the right form, which is option 3, challenged him. So, and challenged him for a fresh round of game. The other gambler began stealthily put the dice into his. So if you see the clue words again, right, which means earlier what did he do? We understood that earlier also he put it in his someplace. What are the options for 6? Let's look at the options that we have for 6. Pocket, throat, sleeve, board, mouth. Because I know earlier he put it in his mouth, here again he has to have put it in his mouth, which is option 5. Moving on. But once again, he was detected by the young gambler, who yelled, "Swallow, swallow. Oh my dear, now you will know what you have swallowed is but poison and not the dice." The poison was soon at work. The cheat wreathed in dash. This again is a colloquial expression. If you're familiar with it, if you've heard this before, it'll be easy for you to identify the answer. But just in case this is something new, you've not heard of this phrase before, let's look at the options for 7. Happiness, pleasure, pain, room, hurting. Obviously, you've swallowed something that has poison. There's definitely not going to be happiness, option 1, or pleasure, option 2, or room, again illogical, hurting, not in the right form, pain would be in the right form, it's a noun, and that's exactly what we need in the blank. Wreathed in pain. His eyes rolled and he fainted. As the young man did not have any dash to kill the fellow gambler, he took out some antidote from his bag and made him drink, which induced vomiting. So his plan was not to kill him, right? So he did not have any. I need to look for a word which brings in the same meaning as plan. Let's look at our options for blank 8. Intention, weapon, wear, means, body. Obviously the answer is option 1, intention, which has the same meaning as plan. He did not plan to kill him. So as a young man did not have any intention. Moving on, the last 2 lines. This dashed the other fellow. So as soon as he gave him the antidote, what are our options for 9th? Sliced the other fellow, cured the other fellow, better the other fellow, killed the other fellow, slept the other fellow. Obviously, it cannot be option 4 or 5. Illogical. Better, not in the right form, though it brings in the meaning that we need. Sliced, again, inappropriate word. Option 2 is the right answer, right? You take a remedial measure to cure the problem, right? So in this context, cured is the answer, option 2. This cured the other fellow. He came back to his senses and never dashed to deceive others in the game of dice. So he went through a near-death experience, right? Meaning, what are our options for 10? And never dared to deceive others, never worried to, never feared to, never crossed to, never decided to. There's nothing here to decide, though it sounds right, right? He went through a near-death experience, so obviously it's going to be option 1. He never dared to even attempt or even think about, playing an unfair game or cheating anybody in this game. There we are. So we have all of our 10 blanks intact. Like I said, because it was a story, it was more easier for you to arrive at the answers, but you need to remember that you're still applying the same techniques, more or less the same techniques that you were applying for a concept or a fact-based passage. So here ends close passage. We've looked at the 2 types, which is either a fact-based or a concept-based passage, and the other type is a story-based passage. But it's good for you to practice both because you're learning and applying more or less the same techniques. Just to recap, some of the techniques that we looked at is forms, different forms, adjective forms, noun forms, based on the context, looking at clue words, articles ahead, adjectives ahead, right? We applied a lot of collocations, colloquial expressions that are used repeatedly in various contexts. We also looked at other things in terms of just applying basic logic. We looked at some specific language components like either a phrasal verb or past participles and how they appear in a sentence, correct? And the right words, vocabulary, based on the context. We looked at the preceding sentence, we looked at the following sentences, we understood what is required in that particular blank in terms of bringing in the right meaning and meaningfully completing the context. So keep practicing, and I will see you guys in the next session.